here again on Fired Up. I'm your host of the show, Bob Irwin. The show is about guns, politics, and self-defense. Each weekday, we will have a guest on to highlight various issues about firearms and firearms laws, use of force. This week, my guest attorney, or tonight my guest attorney, is Michael Giles of Creed & Giles here in Las Vegas. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks
nice to see you again.
Bob. It's a pleasure to be here.
We were talking about self-defense issues. This is a fairly common thing. There's statistics out that are pretty well documented that say about 2.5 million times a year in the United States somebody defends themselves with a firearm. Not cases where they're all shootings, but where they point the gun or allude to the gun in order to break off an attack or some threat on them or their family. These include even cases where the gun's only alluded to, where a homeowner will yell at a sound in the darkness, "Get out of my house, I have a gun." And statistically, I'm told that 95% of the intruders at that point break it off and run away. That less than 5%, when warned, will continue into the house. Only the truly crazy ones walk into where they're being told they're going to get shot. But they still do walk into that, so you should never assume that a warning's going to work, obviously, although it works most of the time. The instances where this happens and the intruder continues in is what we're trying to address here in the show. And I'm sure you are familiar with some cases that happens in.
Oh, absolutely.
We were looking at one just before we came on the air that I'd kind of like to talk about that took place, I gave you a copy earlier, that took place in Olympia, Washington, where an individual apparently came over a fence into somebody's backyard, and the individual that owned the property responded actually with gunfire. What do you think of the details of this kind of case?
Well, this one I believe is a good example of a bad shooting where the person didn't realize what they were doing could get them into serious hot water. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that there weren't criminal charges filed, although my understanding of it is the local prosecutor's office left open the possibility depending on a little more investigation. This is a case where an individual climbed over a wall into somebody's yard, clearly not behavior we want to encourage. The homeowner went outside with a firearm. In this case, it was a handgun, I believe a .40 caliber handgun.
Yeah, and I got to point out to the viewers to this was at 2 a.m.
2 a.m.
The guy came over the fence.
Right.
So
2 a.m. in the morning. At some point, according to the news reports, the individual who had climbed over the fence began climbing back over the fence out of the yard. And that's when the shooting allegedly occurred. The problem with that is you never get to use self-defense when the threat is going away from you. It has to be an imminent threat to you, your body, not your property. There were some other problems with this case. We've talked before, you and I have, and I know other guests you have on the show have talked about this. What you say to the police goes into a report. Right. And it becomes available to everybody. It's public record. The prosecutor's office sees it to decide whether to charge you. In the discovery phase, a civil attorney will see it to see what it is you said. And in this case, allegedly, the shooter said, and I use allegedly a lot because these are news reports. Neither of us were standing there. But assuming he said this, what he said was, "I shot him to protect my property. I was protecting my property." There's never a scenario unless you're protecting the children in the car and that kind of a thing. So the shooting was deemed, he wasn't charged with a crime, but it's an open question. Now he has been sued for the entire panoply of things that you can be sued for. Some of the language.
I recall that's why I pulled this case, because it reads like this is the end of your life. We should probably quote it directly.
The lawsuit seeks payment of medical expenses and damages for permanent disability, pain, suffering, mental anguish, lost wages, employment benefits, diminished earning capacity, out-of-pocket expenses, and loss of enjoyment of life. That's actually pretty standard language in one of these lawsuits. You throw the kitchen sink at it because you want to cover all of the places where the person is injured. The damages here, of course, are not only the perforating injury to the body and the pain and suffering associated with that, but all of the little things you can no longer do. The other challenge this individual is going to face, the shooter is going to face, is that the standard of proof in a criminal case is beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right. We have 12 jurors who all have to agree that you committed a crime.
That's right, and they have to agree that it's beyond a reasonable doubt. So if one of them has a doubt that is a weighty enough doubt to beat that, they can stop the whole process. One person can. In a civil case, it's a preponderance of the evidence. And in Olympia, Washington, in Washington State, I'm sure that they're going to have a jury instruction that says if you find the person acted incorrectly, whether they had a good belief or not, you must find for the victim in this case.
It's their actions, not what they say they were thinking at the time.
That's exactly right. You can't get inside that person's head. I'm sure this individual will testify on their own behalf at the civil trial, and they will say, but I was scared, I was this, I was that. In the end, there's another factor that's in the story that I think will play into it. It says that the victim, they're quoting the victim, I'm going with the person who was shot,
right,
was extremely intoxicated. And this is something that the shooter should have known from their interaction with them. You would think they might have known they were intoxicated. It's just going to be a very difficult case from a civil standpoint, and it could potentially be a difficult case from a criminal standpoint. The prosecutor's office will have years to bring these charges from the actual date of the shooting. The statute of limitations for criminal matters tends to be longer than that of civil.
Even given the intoxicated state, if he could tell in the backyard at night that the guy was intoxicated he was shooting at, what difference would that make anyway? He's not a threat. He was going over the fence the other way, apparently, when he took this .40 caliber round in the torso. This is wrong on so many levels.
So many levels.
I can't.
What we have to remember is juries are made up of people who have never been shot at or shot at anybody, most of the time.
Yeah.
They're also made up of everybody both sides don't want on there. As a defense attorney, I'm kicking off the people I think are pro-prosecution, and the prosecution's kicking off people they think are pro-defense. So what we get is kind of a middle ground there.
That only seems fair.
And I'm sure that this individual was intoxicated will be harped on by his attorney in the civil case, because we would hope reasonable people would take what an intoxicated person says and does at a little different level than a sober individual.
We'll pursue this right after these commercial breaks. Don't go away.
Are you able to protect your loved ones? We at the Gun Store have been helping Las Vegas residents equip themselves with home defense and personal safety products for over 25 years. We carry a full line of self-defense options, and our CCW concealed firearms permit class is free. Our other classes include ladies self-defense and free children's gun safety class. Our indoor range is open 7 days a week for you to try out some options and shoot a real machine gun. The Gun Store, located at 2900 East Tropicana Avenue.
We are back here on Fired Up with my guest, local attorney Michael Giles. I'm happy to have you on the show once again. We were talking about this particular case in Washington. This dates from April last year before last, where the individual, apparently drunk, went into somebody's backyard at 2 a.m, was forever, we don't know what reason he was there. We also don't know why he was decided to leave, but he was climbing back over the fence and was fired at. Struck him a serious wound with a .40 caliber pistol round. We're talking just before the break or just after the break about how training affects this, and gun owners, if they're planning to use the gun for self-defense, should get a little bit of background in the rules of engagement, if you will, where it's reasonable. And I hate to use the term reasonable in this light, but that's the only word that really fits. What we used to call, I don't know if you still use it legally, the reasonable man rule. Would a reasonable person, given the same circumstances, have taken these same actions? And we look at this and realize that the first thing he could have reasonably done when the guy's climbing back over the fence is go back to bed. I see no reason in here to engage the guy. If he didn't do that, he would warn the guy, what are you doing on my property? Yell at him, get away from my house, I got a gun, whatever is appropriate. Any number of things, because what we're dealing with is a horrible shooting. And the training would seem is what we're looking at, to get people to understand what happens in real life.
Absolutely. It brings to mind the History Channel on television did a series called America, The Building of America. And one of the episodes I remember was about when cars began taking over from horses, and it followed an individual who was selling cars. And he said the hardest thing to do was to get people to stop doing what they did with their horses. He would have farmers go for a test drive and yell, "Whoa," and expect the car to stop. The problem with that is they were doing what they've been trained to do. And most individuals do what they're trained to do. And sadly, most of our training these days in this kind of things comes from television and movies. And we see something in the TV and we see something in the movies, even if it's supposed to be a real life recreation, and we absorb that information without going and seeking out better training or real training. You've taught at police academies, and I'm sure at some point you've had a recruit come in and tell you, I know all about this. I'm a better shot than anybody you've ever seen. You know,
at least one in every class.
One in every class, right? And before it's over, you find out that person may be a good shot, but didn't know everything they thought they knew, and it's your job to replace bad information with the good information and hope that they use it going forward.
That's very true, and I can't ever recall an academy, I believe I did 28 of them, where the guy who thought he was the best shot and probably was the best trained coming in, that was the best shot, we award a Top Gun trophy coming out, because they don't listen. They already know everything and they're going to do it their way. But that's an ego thing. But with civilians, when we talk into them in our concealed weapon classes and so on, we generally get the instant statement from somebody, well, if he comes on my property, I can shoot him. Isn't that the law in Nevada, the make my day law? If somebody steps on your property, that you can kill them. And that is so hard to get out of people's head because they hear it over and over again. And that is, of course, absolutely wrong. We don't have a shoot trespassers statute in our state.
We don't. And it does happen a lot. I've taught hundreds of people CCW and just firearms in general. And there was never a course where somebody at the end of it didn't come up to me and say, I really appreciate all the information you taught me, but I don't think I want to carry a gun because I didn't realize all of the stuff that was involved and the liability. And that's certainly their choice. I am happy that they sat through the course, absorbed the information, and realized that there's more to self-defense than just having a firearm and knowing how it functions.
And we don't want to discourage people from having firearms. That obviously is something you need to have to protect yourself. We'll talk about that in the next break, but the issue of having a firearm in your home is, to me, a no-brainer. If you choose not to have a gun because of the rules, you're deciding in advance to be a victim no matter what happens of people coming into your house. Having the gun is a good idea. Whether to use it or not is the choice then. Not having a gun, you have no choice. We'll be back after these commercial messages. Don't go away.
Are you able to protect your loved ones? We at the Gun Store have been helping Las Vegas residents equip themselves with home defense and personal safety products for over 25 years. We carry a full line of self-defense options, and our CCW concealed firearms permit class is free. Our other classes include ladies self-defense and free children's gun safety class. Our indoor range is open 7 days a week for you to try out some options and shoot a real machine gun. The Gun Store, located at 2900 East Tropicana Avenue.
And we are back on Fired Up with my guest, attorney Michael Giles. We were just talking before the commercial break, and I was kind of in the middle of talking about people having a gun in their house, and we've kind of morphed into that. I would have to tell you that at least once a day in my retail store, someone will come up to the counter and look at the guns. Generally, they're a tourist from out of town or something, but because the regular customers are there usually to buy one. But the people that come in will say, "Wow, I don't want to have a gun in my house because I don't want to shoot anybody." And I have to share with them that, as previous guests have said, nobody wants to shoot anybody. There are a few depraved people out there. We're talking about normal citizens. But to make the choice not to have a gun in your house is to decide in advance, no matter who comes through the door, no matter who breaks in, you are going to be a victim of whatever they want to do to you and your family. The gun only allows you to make that choice should a bad guy come in. And you may choose not to shoot them. That's your privilege. But if you don't have the option, Lord knows what's going to happen to you or your family. And I've expressed that many times to people who say, well, I don't want to have a gun, I don't want to kill anybody. And the answer again is, you may change your mind when they're stabbing your wife, that now you do want to kill somebody. It's nice to have a gun there in case you change your mind. The gun doesn't require it that you shoot anybody, but you may change your opinion in the middle of the attack that this guy really needs to be shot.
That's absolutely true. And the individuals that would express that to me, they were talking about whether they would get and carry a firearm with a CCW. I always expressed the same thing that you just expressed. I said, look, you understand now what is required of you, which means you're leaps ahead of somebody who doesn't. You need to have the ability to defend yourself and make it an option. But we don't want to limit our abilities, obviously. So, but the important aspect of any training is that the individual who's going to have the firearm there goes beyond the basics of how do I get ammunition into it and which end, right, as Crocodile Dundee would say, the dangerous end. So we want to make sure that they understand you can't chase people down the street shooting at them because they threw eggs at your house or your car. You can't get into a good gunfight in your house and then chase the one that's getting away down the street and shoot them 5 or 6 houses away. You're going to be found good for the first one and bad for the second one. And these are things people learn from television, and you're giggling because you know that's a real case here from Las Vegas.
The cases you're talking about, I've seen both of those actually, where somebody shot at somebody for throwing eggs at their house, and several where they chased people down the street. And then after they chased them for literally 100 yards or better, claimed self-defense. Mm-hmm. And we have this, as you know, this basic thing in the law that we look at who supplied the force to bring the parties together. I chased this guy until I finally had to defend myself. Is not a good scenario unless you chase him, he stops, and then tries to attack you again. But that is...
Even then, you're running
He's going to claim self-defense. This maniac with a gun was chasing me, so I tried to defend myself because I couldn't outrun him. Call 911, describe what the guy looked like, let them chase him. They not only have body armor and bigger guns, they have free lawyers. They don't have to worry about that, right?
True.
The training is so important. We have people in our concealed weapon class all the time, literally all the time, who do not actually want to get a concealed weapon permit. They just want to learn what the rules are and we use the class because the rules are the same, whether you can use lethal force or warnings of lethal force or whatever apply in your house or outside your house or so forth. The going and getting the training, reading somebody's book that tells you how to do that are just crucially important. If you're going to have a gun, you need to know the rules. It's like driving a car without the owner's manual or any driving instruction. It's mandatory that you learn how to do it right.
I would agree, and it certainly will help me if you come to me and say I was in a shooting and I've been charged or it's a civil case, that we can point to that training. The other side's going to point, they're going to try and make you out to be a crazy person who just shoots randomly. And we need to be able to back up that what you did was based on your perception, your fears, and your training. And so it becomes vital that you seek out some training. You certainly have an absolute Second Amendment right to possess firearms.
That said, we'll be back in just a moment after these commercial messages.
Our Are you tired of the same old routine? It's time to shake things up with a visit to the Pro Gun Club of Las Vegas. Located just 25 minutes from the Strip, Pro Gun Club offers 160 acres of space, featuring skeet shooting, rifle and handgun ranges. It's a great place to practice, and safety is always number one. Come anytime and enjoy the grounds, or ask about our membership. The Pro Gun Club is a great place to celebrate and respect your Second Amendment right. Spice up your leisure time with the Pro Gun Club. Call us at 293-2108 today.
We are back here on Fired Up with my guest, Attorney Mike Giles. We were addressing before the break the instance where I was talking about a fellow who chased another guy down for 100 yards and then claimed he fired in self-defense. Give me a little more detail on that. You brought something up that was interesting.
Well, the challenge, all self-defense has to revolve around a reasonable belief. You said the reasonable person standard, which is what we do use. A reasonable person would have to have believed you had a fear for your life. But there's a second aspect to it, especially in Nevada. From a criminal standpoint, to claim self-defense, you may not be the primary aggressor. So you can't start a fight, get a beating, and in the middle of the beating realize this is going really wrong for me and result to deadly force at that point. The same problem occurs, at least from a criminal standpoint in my mind, if the fight is over and the person is running away and you are no longer in imminent danger. If you chase that person down, then you stand a real possibility of being declared the primary aggressor on the second event. So if they turn around, like you said, and now they're in fear, there's a crazy man with a gun chasing me.
Yeah, if you chase him and then you're going to say I was in fear of my
fear
life,
of my
that's
life.
why I was chasing the guy?
That's right. So,
so
you're
that makes no
probably
sense.
the primary aggressor in that second scenario. And while you might be good for the first one, if you'd shot him during the first aggressive attack where you were defending yourself legitimately, you cannot allow that, gee, I'm not going to let him get away with that mentality to come in. He's running away, you're now in a safe place, get on the phone and call 911, get the people out there who are trained to handle this. The other thing that comes to my mind is a lot of our training, and one of the reasons things like that happen is we get it from all sorts of places. You know, my Uncle Joe, who was in World War II, said this.
Right.
My Uncle Fred, who lives on a farm in the middle of Texas, said that. In the criminal defense world, I refer to it as the some dude defense. Every one of my clients who is incarcerated knows some dude who got off and his record's way worse. It doesn't work out unless it's a real case and real law that we can look at. So don't rely on what somebody tells you is the law. Go to an attorney, ask them, do the research, read a book like your book, read a book like any of the books Masad Ayub has written on self-defense, Alan Corwin, who's an attorney down in Phoenix, Arizona. They're all fabulous sources of information. Attend a CCW course. I know you teach it at your store 3-4 times a week now.
Yep.
They're all over town. It's a day out of your life, and it may save you 10 to 15 years of your life.
I'd have to agree, and it's part of the reason for this show and why I started the show years ago was that there is so much misinformation out there when we run a CCW class. And you'll hear people say, well, there's a lot of states that have constitutional carry, and I agree, you should be able to carry a gun. But there's always one or two people in the class who are so unknowledgeable, they learned it from watching, Sylvester Stallone movies, that they're going to make a big mistake out in the real world. And we encourage people to get the training, get a book. We've got some for sale on my website of my books, if you'd like. We're gonna wrap this up now. Thanks so much for being on again, Michael. It's always a pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for watching our show tonight. You can make comments or write into the show if you like at our Facebook website, facebook.com/firedupwithbob. Thanks for tuning in again.
Are you tired of the same old routine? It's time to shake things up with a visit to the Pro Gun Club of Las Vegas. Located just 25 minutes from the Strip, Pro Gun Club offers 160 acres of space, featuring skeet shooting, rifle and handgun ranges. It's a great place to practice, and safety is always number one. Come anytime and enjoy the grounds, or ask about our membership. The Pro Gun Club is a great place to celebrate and respect your Second Amendment right. Spice up your leisure time with the Pro Gun Club. Call us at 293-2108 today.